The Curse of Drugs. My name is William, and I'm here to tell you about something that happened to a young woman named Lucy. This isn't just a story of fear, but a disturbing descent into the hellish depths of a macabre reality. Get ready to dive into a narrative that blends drugs, spiritual obsessions, and a tragic ending you'll never forget. If you have the courage, stay with me until the end of this story. Lucy was a lively young American, beautiful and outgoing. Living in New York, she had a special fondness for parties. The dazzling lights, the deafening beat of electronic music, and the sense of freedom were part of her world. With a spirited group of friends, Lucy frequented the city's trendiest clubs, always seeking a new experience. It was during one of these nights that she met Jim. He was tall, with messy hair that seemed carefully disheveled. There was something about him that exuded confidence. Perhaps it was his carefree smile or the way he seemed unfazed by the chaos around him. "Can I get you a drink?" he asked, leaning closer to be heard over the loud music. Lucy accepted without hesitation. They talked for hours, between sips of colorful cocktails and spontaneous laughter. Jim seemed different from other guys she knew. He wasn't just interested in dancing. There was a mystery about him that piqued Lucy's curiosity. Their meetings became frequent. Jim knew exactly where the best parties were happening and always had an intriguing story to tell. Lucy was drawn to that intense, rule-free life. One night, at a particularly crowded party, Jim took Lucy's hand and led her outside. "Let's take a walk. It's too noisy here." The night breeze brought a welcome relief. They walked to a quiet alley, away from the vibrant lights and deafening sound. Jim stopped and pulled something out of his pocket, a small package Lucy didn't immediately recognize. "Do you trust me?" he asked with an enigmatic smile. Lucy hesitated for a moment. There was something dangerous about the situation, but adrenaline and curiosity won out. "Of course I do," she replied, trying to sound confident. Jim opened the package, revealing small, shiny rocks. It was crack. Lucy knew it was heavy stuff, but the night's atmosphere seemed to encourage new experiences. "Just once," Jim said, as if reading her thoughts. "It'll be unbelievable." Lucy accepted. The first hit burned her throat, but the euphoria that followed was overwhelming. The world around her seemed to dissolve into colors and sensations she had never experienced before. At that moment, Lucy had no idea she had crossed a line from which it would be difficult to return. The night that began with dancing and laughter now marked the beginning of her descent into a vortex of addiction and terror. The following days were a blur in Lucy's life. Each meeting with Jim carried the promise of escaping reality, a reality that quickly became increasingly unbearable. Crack offered temporary relief, but soon plunged her into an even deeper void. She began missing important appointments, distanced herself from friends, and avoided any prolonged contact with her parents, who were increasingly worried. The sparkle in her eyes had vanished, replaced by a lost and restless gaze. Her parents tried to confront her. "Lucy, what's happening?" her mother asked, her voice trembling. "You're not the same." "I'm fine, just tired," Lucy replied, avoiding her mother's gaze. But everyone knew it wasn't just fatigue. The hallucinations began subtly. Shadows that seemed to move at the corner of her vision, distant whispers she couldn't understand. Initially, Lucy tried to ignore them, attributing everything to the effects of the drugs. But the spirits grew bolder. They began manifesting more frequently, their voices gaining form and clarity. "You need more," they said. "Go back to that alley. Get more." Lucy tried to resist, but the voices were insistent, almost hypnotic. When she finally gave in, the sense of relief was brief, quickly replaced by crushing guilt. One night, returning from yet another meeting with Jim, Lucy saw a figure standing in the living room. It was tall, shrouded in shadows, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce her soul. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but a cruel smile formed on its lips. "You belong to us now," it finally said before disappearing. Lucy fell to her knees, her heart racing wildly. She knew something was terribly wrong. The spirits seemed to feed on her addiction, becoming increasingly present and threatening. What had once been mere shadows now had distinct forms. They followed her through the streets, hid in her room, and invaded her dreams. Lucy began to lose the distinction between reality and hallucination. "You'll never get rid of us," they whispered incessantly. The mental pressure became unbearable. Lucy began avoiding mirrors, fearing she'd see something beyond her own reflection. The voices wouldn't stop, pushing her further into an abyss. "End it already," they said. "There's only one way out." Desperate, Lucy tried to seek help, but shame and fear kept her from opening up to anyone. She was trapped in a spiral of destruction, with the obsessive spirits firmly holding the reins of her mind. Each day was a battle between succumbing to addiction and trying to regain control of her life. But the spirits weren't willing to let her go. They wanted more than her addiction. They wanted her soul. Lucy knew she needed to find a way to escape the nightmare, but each attempt seemed futile, and as the voices continued to echo in her mind, a terrible certainty formed. This was just the beginning. Lucy was no longer the lively young woman who danced under New York's lights. Addiction had stolen her essence, and the obsessive spirits seemed increasingly determined to destroy her completely. They were no longer content to just haunt her. They wanted a final sacrifice. The voices became unbearable. "You know what you need to do," they whispered incessantly. "End it." Lucy began planning something dark. The anger she felt towards Jim grew daily. She blamed him for introducing her to that world of destruction. One night, she grabbed a knife from her kitchen. The cold metal trembled slightly in her hand, but her determination was unwavering. The spirits seemed to silently applaud her decision. "Yes, do it," they encouraged. She arranged to meet Jim in a secluded spot where they usually gathered to use drugs and drink. The place was dark, surrounded by trees that seemed like silent witnesses to what was about to happen. When Jim arrived, he wore the same carefree smile as always. "Hey Lou, are you okay?" he asked, noticing her distant look. "I'm great," she replied, forcing a smile. They used their drugs and drank until reality became distorted. But this time, something was different. Lucy wasn't there just to lose herself in addiction. She had a mission. She held the knife hidden in her coat, feeling the cold weight of the metal against her skin. The voices in her head were louder than ever. "Now!" they shouted in unison. Lucy stood abruptly, her gaze fixed on Jim. "I'm in this life because of you," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "You ruined my family, and today will be your last day." Jim's eyes widened, surprised and confused. "What are you talking about? Lucy, calm down." But it was too late. With a swift motion, Lucy plunged the knife into Jim's chest, right above his heart. Blood gushed, staining her hands red. Jim tried to get up, but Lucy, in a frenzy of rage and pain, delivered 10 more stabs. The silence that followed was broken only by Lucy's sobs. She looked at Jim's blood-soaked body, reality beginning to seep through the fog of rage. But the spirits weren't satisfied. "Now you," they whispered with perverse sweetness. "End it." Lucy, still in tears, raised the knife and cut her wrists. The pain was intense, but soon a numbness took over. As her blood spread across the ground, the spirits seemed to dance around her, finally satisfied. The next morning, 2 passers-by who walked by the scene were confronted with the macabre sight. Lucy and Jim's bodies lay side by side, enveloped in an unsettling silence. Lucy's story ended there, but the echoes of her descent into hell would continue to haunt those who dared to hear her tale.